Okay, good afternoon, everyone, to the July 14th American Viticultural Area Planning Committee meeting being held either at council chambers and via teleconference with the COVID restrictions that are in place. And so happy to have everyone here today to continue on our very productive visioning discussions that we had in our June meeting. And we'll get started.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, and Jared, can you do the flag salute, please? Oh, he's not even here. What am I doing? Okay, there you go.
Ready? Begin.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have an approval of the minutes, if everyone's been able to read them.
I'll make a motion.
You have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Do we have any public comment?
We received one written comment before the meeting from a Kathy Barton with the Trails and Open Space Committee.
Okay, is that something we want to read into the record, or?
Yeah, I'll read it into the
Okay.
record if that is okay with everyone. Okay, it says, I have read through all the materials and here are my initial thoughts. Creating a wine industry in Yucaipa will be a very cool outcome. It will likely take decades to come to fruition, so patience will be key. Immediate economic benefit is, in my opinion, unrealistic. Job creation will be slow, and I note the average salaries of various vineyards, tasting room employees. These are not salaries that will allow many to purchase a home in Yucaipa, but well within the income range to rent in Yucaipa. So I would anticipate a daily commute into Yucaipa, which is not a bad thing. These workers will buy lunch, gasoline, and incidentals while they are here. I wonder if it is necessary to have another attraction to make Yucaipa a destination. Certainly the apple growing region of Oakland is one. When developed, Five Winds Ranch could be another. Give people a reason to spend the entire day or more in Yucaipa, apple shopping, wine tasting, and dinner in the fall, winter, or wine tasting recreation, including glamping at Five Winds, show at the Performing Arts Center, and dinner in Yucaipa the rest of the year. Capitalizing on the Winter Fest and Arts Fest could help. It's hard to imagine there being a benefit to the lodging industry, at least in the midterm. Marketing will be key. Preserving some of Yucaipa's agricultural heritage is a worthy goal. And balancing this long-term vision with the short-term and medium-term needs of the city to generate revenue will be the trick. The area preserved for viticulture displaces some of the future high-end housing stock. The city could lose out on some hefty development fees, which I imagine funds infrastructure and property tax revenue. A lowering of the average household income could also result in meaning people who live here have less disposable income to spend on locally owned businesses, impact on the portion of the sales tax revenue that is returned to the city. I don't envy the decision makers with this one. Happy to discuss if you would like. Kathy.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I don't know if this is to you or to Sheila.
Okay. I'll take this off. Good afternoon, everyone. Apologize to anyone I have my back to here. We're going to start with a review of the June meeting, and thanks so much for all of your comments. We do have a detailed account of all the comments. We're displaying just a few. If you want to go ahead. And just to kind of give a recap of the overarching comments. So the first one talks about vineyards being a lifestyle. We have the opportunity to build an industry while simultaneously creating an attractive environment. And then also the committee members asked us to consider the areas that are best suited for potential vineyard and or winery facilities and the potential criteria and size for those facilities. And then we heard many times from many of you that you would like to protect the rural atmosphere and charm that makes Yucaipa unique. And then the last overarching comment is to create a wine tourism destination having the potential to bring economic benefits to Yucaipa and energize the Uptown District. So we have created some displays around the room, and after we go through a couple stakeholder proposals, we're going to give all of you that are here in the room a chance to weigh in on these with these dots that we've provided. The red dots would be things that you would not like to see move forward, and the other colors are things that you would like to see forward. So that would be green, yellow, or blue. So and we've done this exercise quite a bit in the past. I think Denise, you said with the general plan update it was done. So it's kind of a really cool visual way to see how things are coming out. So today we're going to present 3 stakeholder proposals from people who own property in the area. So we can go to the next slide. So the first one, it's actually Old Sugar Mill. That's a typo on my part. I wrote Old Salt Mill, so I apologize for that. We have 3 locations. The third one is kind of falling off the map at the bottom. There we go. All right. So concept 1 is the Old Sugar Mill, which is an 80-acre parcel right along Oak Glen Road on the far western reach of the city boundary. And then concept 2 is Serrano Vineyards. That's 52 acres, right in the northern portion of the North Bench. And then the third concept is Roldan Vineyards, which is just south of Oak Glen Road, and that is 38 acres. You can go ahead. So this first proposal has quite a few different elements enclosed and wrapped up on one site plan. So as we look at it, I'd like for each of us to kind of think about each element separately, because there is a shared tasting room, there's also a hotel and event venue, there are 100 homes, and then there are vineyards. So this board is right there on the far left. The site plan is in the center, and it's the Koiman project. I spoke to Mike Koiman quite a bit, so I feel like I understand the proposal pretty well. He is proposing that there would be a winery with a shared venue. Next slide. So someone that wanted to make wine but didn't own vineyards could have a tasting area. There are, I think, 11 shown in the proposal. And it gives an opportunity for a visitor to come and sample wines from 11 different areas, so 11 different labels. So this is emulating something that Mike actually has done near Sacramento that's been very successful, and he would like to see it, bring it to Yucaipa. And then the site plan is over on the left. So the tasting room is near the front of the project on the right. And then next slide. So the next portion of the project on the right shows a hotel, and it is a bit of an intense hotel. This would be large enough to handle a large wedding party, and Mike said that this is really the portion of the project that he feels is needed the most in order to create a tourist destination in Yucaipa. So, and he has a few pictures on the right. So he said the housing, he was more than willing to modify that. That was put together very quickly, as I said, and it could be modified, and he's open for comments. So today's our chance to give him our comments. So go ahead. And then the next concept, this is Serrano Vineyards. This is 52 acres, and it also shows 52 homes. So this is not showing more homes than what would be allowed on the property originally because it's R1. So
Unknown participant is now joining.
Hello?
Sounds like
Hello?
Hi, we're here.
So this concept also includes a tasting room, and the northern part of the property is natural open space, and there are vineyards near the winery and tasting room, and there is a buffer between the homes and the vineyards of about 200 feet. And that's what we're seeing is minimal from several sources that we've been talking to. So the other thing about this project is it only has one interface between residential and the vineyards. So it's not surrounded with vineyards like the other project was. So then I'm going to turn the microphone over to Caesar Roldan. This is his proposal. So Caesar, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you guys so much for giving me this opportunity to share my heart a little bit. Am I loud and clear?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Perfect. So I am a new Yucaipian. I've actually moved into Yucaipa about 30 months ago, so a little over 2.5 years. And one of the things that we really loved about Yucaipa was the rural setting that we have that makes you feel away from the city, but yet you're not that far from the city and from everything else. And when we came here, we didn't know what to do with our land. And there was just not many options of what we could do with the land. And when we heard the opportunity of putting up a vineyard and then started looking into some of the pros and cons to that, it was definitely a no-brainer that a vineyard would go up in our 38 acres up on the on Pendleton Road. And as we were just searching it out, digging for more information, we discovered obviously the low usage of water and obviously the potential of making it into a business, and also protecting the land from any further development, which from what we've seen and we heard in our last meeting, it seems like that's the common denominator here that we all have, is that we like Yucaipa the way it is, and we would like to continue to preserve it the way it is. And so we decided to jump on the project, and we have developed 1 acre on our land, and it will continue to grow into more acreage. And, one of the things that we envision to do is maybe do something like a bed and breakfast, where we can have people who come in to do maybe one of the shows at the White Pack and stay over for the whole weekend and enjoy some of the local wines, some of the local restaurants, and be able to give them somewhere to stay. And that is part of the vision of what we can do, what we want to do. And obviously with Yucaipa becoming a destination, a wine destination, it's a win-win for all. I do semi-agree with the public comment that was shared earlier. It is going to take time, but I believe that we will, in the future, be able to look back and know that we took the responsibility today to be able to make a difference for tomorrow and for generations to come. And I see it a lot in myself, and I also would like to have a lot of people who are listening now to also take that, not only that social responsibility, but to make sure that we do the right thing for the future. There are not a lot of opportunities that give Yucaipa the opportunity that the wine industry would give it. There are not a lot of industries that we can bring to Yucaipa that will benefit Yucaipa the way the wine industry will, and the viticulture industry. Yes, the employment and all that stuff is a positive thing that is going to continue to develop, and it is a year-round thing, as people have already mentioned. We actually launched a prototype of a company, a viticultural service that can not only design, install, but also maintain some of these vineyards. And we've gotten such a positive feedback from that it was part of it was to prove the fact that there is an industry within it already, not just making the wine, not just selling the wine, but all of the back labor behind it is also part of that industry that benefits locals, because now people who live in Yucaipa can work in Yucaipa and spend in Yucaipa. And yes, even some people who, as I mentioned, they can't maybe afford to live in Yucaipa, they can come from outside and work in Yucaipa, have lunch in Yucaipa, and be able to be here and again continue to grow the industry and benefit all around. So our vision is it is long going, and it's projected to go further out, but with the support and the development of the AVA here and finding the best way to implement that in the area is going to be a great thing for Yucaipa. I humbly believe, and I'm not an expert by any means, but I do believe that this is one of the few opportunities that this town will have to become a fine destination and be able to develop from it. So our vision is to employ people and be able to be a resource to individuals to benefit the city, benefit their families, and continue to give back. And I think, again, the wine industry will allow us to be able to touch all those points in a very good way, and not just for a season, but for a long time to come. Thank you for hearing me out. I think that's part of my heart. If we ever get a chance to sit one-on-one, you'll hear a little bit more, but this is what I have now. I know we're limited on time, so thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you. Now that was this,
Caesar Roldan, yes,
Roldan,
the owner of
okay,
this property.
That first photograph that we have on the slides, is that the 1 acre that he has planted right now?
Yes, that's correct.
and the exact location, I'm sorry, I can't read like this one map. I can't read the streets at all on here. So
He's off Pendleton Road,
Pendleton.
south of Oakland Road.
Pendleton, south of Oakland.
Yep.
Okay.
So he's kind of into the hillside adjacent to the hillside overlay district. So if I recall correctly, that was part of his vision, as well as how that integrates in with the development potential of some of those hillside areas.
This where the road is getting straightened out on Pendleton?
It's further south than that. I think you're referring to the intersection at Pendleton and Oakland Road. This is actually further south as it's winding through kind of that area, and so it's along the bluff over there.
So it's just south of the basins?
We're almost at the corner with Date.
And it's 38 acres.
Is that in the wash at all?
Caesar, why don't you give us your address? That would be helpful.
Sure, it's 11727 Pendleton Road. We are a little bit south of Date Street, so Date and Pendleton Road.
Date. Okay. Try to find that.
Does anyone have any other questions for Caesar?
Does, I don't know if I have a question for Caesar or not, but that Yucaipa 52, is that different than Roldan Vineyards? Is that different than Caesar?
Yes, it is.
Is it okay?
The 3 locations are shown on a map that we showed at the beginning they're here in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Can we flip back to that slide?
Yep. So the 52, the Serrano Vineyards, that's actually on Yucaipa Ridge Road. So that's at the very far north end of the city limits, actually just south of the North Cork Vineyard location, outside in the county of San Bernardino, or unincorporated area of Yucaipa. And then the other one is at the edge of Oakland Road, adjacent to the Five Winds Ranch. And I do want to note just quickly that there is approved tentative residential tract maps on those 2 particular sites, and so this would be a pretty significant departure from those previously approved maps.
That's what I was going to ask. There's current, they already have approved track maps for these.
They do, and the Serrano Vineyards itself is a timely filed map as well, so they already have the legal right to build, a certain development pattern.
How much? I mean, how many homes?
52.
2 homes.
Okay, so that one's, they're 1 acre minimums. And then what about the 80 acres by the Five Winds Ranch?
That one I think had a lower yield than, I think it was around 70 units, I think it was. what is on the tentative map for that, and so.
And is there anything already for the Roldan?
No, there's no projects
There's
on
no-
that. So it's just the vineyard that he's planted, and well, it's very beautiful.
Okay,
I have a question.
go ahead.
Do any of these three projects as proposed require a density transfer?
Well, they are proposing different density than what's allowed, so it would be something, there would be something required.
Like a significant amount? Because, I'm kind of confused. I read over the, the specifications for the standard plans, and I got a little confused as far as, we were talking about density transfers, and then I read over the grant application. So I have a question about that too. As these projects are proposed here, does that affect the grant as applied? Because as the grant's applied, it's all supposed to be viticulture, right? There's not supposed to be any housing or anything like that.
I guess to clarify very quickly, so none of the Serrano vineyards, or I guess even any of the tasting rooms itself, really isn't something that's allowed under the current development code. And so this is just some ideas that different people on their properties, as they're thinking about the wine production, is how do we create, different solutions for it. And so it's just more conceptual. In terms of the grant application for, I assume referring to the SALT grant, is since we don't have any agricultural zoning, we don't have that, is we're trying to figure out how the best way to do it. And so as long as we're able to carve out, one, not avoid our legal requirements for the housing, no net loss provisions, but establishing agricultural lands, that's really the key component. Is we're trying to create ag land, and so that's kind of some ideas that these people have presented.
I
Just to
understand
throw
that
out
part
there,
of
so.
it, but what I'm saying is, this land per the grant is supposed to be, is it supposed to be vitified in the future? Or is there a way that there can be housing and viticulture per the grant application?
We are not limited on how it's applied, other than as long as we're creating ag land and preserving ag land from future development. So that
Okay.
really is the key thing. So the idea, I guess, to carve it another way, is the Serrano vineyard site is if they develop the 52 lots or whatever that case is, said we're going to do vineyards, and then shows up 10 years later and decides to build houses on that vineyard location, then that would certainly not be something that would be consistent. And so it's making sure as we develop any programs in place that we're focusing on, one, the creation of ag land, but then two, a mechanism to make sure it's actually preserved in perpetuity as well.
I get that, thank you. And there's another question. So one of the plans has tasting rooms on site. So there's 11 different tasting rooms where, is it Yucaipa wineries can come and have tasting rooms, or is it open to everybody? And then my second question is, the other two don't have, they have their own tasting rooms and their own individual tasting rooms. The other one has, like a group tasting room, and we talked about that in the Uptown. And these are completely different concepts. And, when I was reading back, and I did some research as you asked us to do on our homework, and I'm not sure that this is the appropriate time to talk about all of that. But as I did my research and I looked at the different regions and the different locations, and, each location branded itself with a certain style, let's say. And so when I looked at Malibu, for example, it was kind of a contemporary, streamlined look. When I looked at Temecula, we all know what Temecula looks like. When I looked at, I think it was St. Helena or another area, it was really rural and barny and all that kind of thing. So, when I read the standards and the plan and what we're supposed to be studying, and again, if this isn't the appropriate place, I'll save it for when we're doing our homework. But to me, those are great plans, and we should think about those and talk about those, whatever. But I think we need to back up and look at what the overlay is. I mean, we haven't determined minimum lots. We haven't determined looks. We haven't even talked about a central wine room or those type of concepts. Because when I'm looking at this, to me, what's really important, and we're going to talk about that when we do our vision. But, you know, the city has put a lot of money in branding, the look, you know, a city city hall and the sheriff's station and YPAC and the community center, all of that. So, you know, we got a sugar mill over here or a real industrial look, and I'm sure everybody's got their ideas, which probably are beautiful, but if we're trying to come up with a consistent plan and an overlay, we haven't even backed up to that
Okay,
idea.
well, I think I don't think we need to back up to that. It's up to Sheila, but I think that's something that we'll work out down the road, that right now we're just looking at concept rather than architecture and that sort of thing. And
Yeah, that's correct, Denise. Just as we've asked all of you to, I'll take my mask off.
There you go.
Just as we've asked all of you to share your vision, these are stakeholders sharing the vision for their property. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a proposal to be commented on yet. It's just to put it out there, and we're all going to have a chance to weigh in with the stickers. So there's nothing that's actually, nothing concrete that's being decided at this point. We're still in the high level
I think
discussions.
the easier way to think of it, since these are just, you know, kind of just ideas thrown on pages, rather than look at it as a site plan, do I want to see this particular, you know, track map or development site design, is more the ideas that are envisioned with it. So the Koyman, as an example, has that kind of shared facility. So as we had talked about with the Wine Alliance presentations, you have some of those different, you know, as part of the wine industry, it isn't just always the estate growers. There may be just people that want to buy grapes and sell them. And so a facility like that may be a one way to help facilitate that design, whether or not it's appropriate in that particular site, or maybe in the uptown where it may be a little bit more. There's ideas to that. Seems like both the Roldan Vineyards and the Koyman also reference some sort of lodging potential. So that's an idea is, okay, is that a component to this AVA implementation that makes sense to do? And so rather than going, this is exactly the layout you're going to see, there's pieces, I think, that we can either decide that seems like a good approach or maybe not. You know, even with the Serrano, there's some buffering between the natural open space vineyards to other uses proposed, and so maybe that's a way that design makes sense, or maybe some of those buffers need to be augmented to some degree. But I think right now, since we're still at the high level, it's more just the general ideas. Since they own particular properties, they've all kind of thrown it onto the context of that individual site, but it
might
doesn't
be
necessarily
something
have to
they
be
would
that way.
prefer to see, but it doesn't mean it's something that we all want to see.
So as we get a little bit further in our 6 case studies, we'll be seeing more visuals and understanding their concepts. So,
Sure.
yeah, I think that's where I'm kind of short. I've never been to a central
Okay.
tasting room like that, and I think, you know, I don't know what that's about,
Yeah,
so.
and that's just that's out there.
Yeah, it's that's a relatively novel concept. The concept of putting a number of different tasting rooms in one location. I will say I'd like to add to Ben's point that given the fact that we have something that could morph from agricultural into homes over a given period of time, I would question very seriously the legitimacy of placing homes of that density. And speaking of a density shift, I think this board seriously needs to consider a density shift away from very specific regions in the city, and that certainly would include that overlay district.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's something that we all need to look at, and we're going to have to look at the areas and the mitigation measures that would go into, you know, creating these types of venues in these areas, and how much it would affect not just whether those homes would be there, but how much would it affect the homes that are already there or other projects in the area that are approved. I mean, there's all kinds of things out there. So right now, today, I'm sure that's what our idea is. You know, you like that or you don't like that. Right?
Exactly.
Give them a sticker that says, I don't like that.
And it could be, I don't like it this way, but there may be an element where you go, I
Right.
kind of like this component, even you mentioned, the architecture with it. And so certainly the sugar mill destination has a very kind of, packing house kind of aesthetic to it. And that agricultural kind of design may be appropriate, or as kind of other city facilities, more craftsman architecture. And there may be kind of a homage to different styles that as different facilities develop, that may be more appropriate. And so that could be a discussion too, is would we want some design specificity or would we not? And there's no limitations on how that transpires. So.
Anyone on the phone have a comment? No? Okay.
Not at this time.
Okay.
Our goal for today was really to show both ends of the spectrum and then one somewhere in the middle so that we could just show the range of possibilities.
What it also does not really show us is the impact on the rest of the community at each of these sites. I don't know how to say, oh, I like that and I don't like that, because I don't know what it, in the end, it's going to, the roads are going to look like, what the, if there's any mitigation measures that are going to be taken for the other residents in town, and what's going to happen. I mean, my biggest concern, honestly, is, I like Oak Glen, but I'll tell you what, that's like, there's several times during the year that I don't even want to go close to that place. And if I lived there, I would be really upset, because people are parking in their streets and in their driveways and blocking, and it's in the wintertime they do it to play in the snow, and in the summer, in the fall when we have apple blossoms are in the spring and picking is in the fall, and I understand it's the lifeblood of that community, but it's not, there's a lot of residents in Yucaipa who are already here. Unlike the housing grew around Oak Glen, around those orchards, unlike here. So I'm just voicing my concern right now for everyone to know that to me is a huge issue. And I think it would probably be a huge issue for the community when this gets out there. So whatever we do, I'm for one, I'm going to need to know a lot more. I'm going to need a lot more information about water and roads and, traffic, which will be, what's the, how many people are expected at this place? If we've got 11 tasting rooms, I mean, I don't know. The other thing is, do we need a parking someplace down close to the freeway, and that the wineries pay for that transportation back and forth, rather than seeing 100 cars? Maybe you have a couple buses that bus people back and forth. I don't know, but those are just
That's a great
big
idea.
concerns. Okay.
Well, some of this is identifying the style. What's our style? What's our look? And I think we all have to kind of create that vision of where we want to see it be, because there are different ways of approaching this. And we've all talked about these, but, kind of have to kind of visualize where we want to be. And then, because I don't want to see homes up populating everything and traffic is going to be crazy. Put the homes in more denser areas, maybe down closer to the freeway, leave the areas more developed for rural before that. But I think if we kind of come together with what our vision is and how we can structure where you're growing your grapes, where you're producing the fruit, where you're servicing the community with selling the wine, you can have multiple tasting rooms in a building, but it could be in the uptown, where you're already attracting people in and doing things. There are all kinds of things we could do. I think, as we come together, that's what we want to try to do, right? Is create this image of what we want to see and how we can incentivize it the best possible to get there.
There's a whole nother facet to this that I want to bring up. And that is, I wish, Ben, can you put an aerial up of that whole north bench going up to, Five Winds and the El Dorado? Because, we're talking about that whole area there that, like, the Five Winds Ranch and the El Dorado don't exist. And that's a significant portion of that north bench up there going up to Oak Glen. And the project that we see up here with the hotel is just west of the estuary where the Five Winds Ranch, it borders Five Winds Ranch there. So Five Winds Ranch, and I'm not sure everybody knows what that is, but that's a project that has been ongoing for several years, and PlaceWorks did a great job on it, and it would be very important for the committee to see where that is when we're talking about the wine region, because that's a really big area there. And the Five Winds Ranch has plans for, can you put it up there, Ben? Just the Five Winds Ranch plan? I mean, I'm not sure, yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure everybody knows what that is. It's camping and horse camping and a venue right there and an adobe. It's 10 acres, and then the El Dorado wraps all the way around it, and that's open land. That's hiking, equestrian, and mountain biking, and that's that's a critical path in our trail system. So when we're talking about that north bench, I think it's really important to see what is going on there right now. Currently, it's already planned. It's already in the process. The city's going to, make the final approval of it, which also includes some aesthetics on the Oak Glen Road, vinification a little bit, so it looks that way going up. But while we're talking about that and we're looking at these maps, a lot of the area that we're talking about has protected habitat. And that habitat is in these gorges, right? So when I'm looking at these maps and I can see that they're over some of these huge canyons, I know those are hypothetical and those are at the beginning stages, but, we have to be sensitive to what the general plan states now and what the plan is in the future. Oak Glen is influencing community because it's contiguous with Yucaipa. But Five Winds Ranch is happening, and so is El Dorado. It's our newest park. So to look at a map, can you blow it up, Ben, in that area? I think it's, we really need to take a look at it because that's the area we're talking about. That's Oak Glen Road going all the way up. Can you put your pointer on the Five Winds Ranch? And then go up from there to the El Dorado?
And just for clarification, all the exhibits and aerials were provided as a hard copy and then also emailed out. So
Yeah, and we need to talk about that because that's up there and that's predominant what's going on. Ben, point to the west property line of the Five Winds Ranch.
You mean the El Dorado Five Winds Ranch
Yeah,
complex?
There it is right there. So the project we're talking about with the hotel is going to be right there off of Oak Glen Road. So that's an estuary. It's a big water thing, and there's trails all the way around it. But, the hotel sits like 200 feet off the road, which is, it's going to ruin that whole vista. So I think we need to be really, really sensitive about those type of things. If we're going to vinify areas, it should probably have an aesthetic all the way up towards Oak Glen Road, and don't put it like right there, where it's going to block the views and it's going to impact Five Winds Ranch.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Christine.
I do believe there's enough open space as you're going east up there where you'll be living in harmony. And I think there's room for both. It's just the way it's laid out with, barriers. I think it can be done. And it'll just be more of an attraction for the communities to get up there. More reason for people to be up there and to see what we have.
I think if I may quickly summarize some key points from your discussion is one, having adequate buffers from certain natural resources and along the roadway. So having that be kind of a key component, and then sounds like building heights as well, so that as you're looking from Five Winds Ranch, looking down, you don't have views obstructed through that. And so certainly those are, I think, key ideas that could be carried along on kind of that vision as well. On kind of the implementation side is the elements that we want to preserve, and how do we create the mechanisms in place to help ensure that. And certainly those are two facets that are pretty key and can be part of the site process as we get to the more detailed stuff.
My point is just a great design makes a great plan. And so if we don't design it properly, you can't fix it. So I just think we have to be vigilant about the design.
All right. So from this point, I think we can go into the visioning exercise.
And so we did get, Christine kind of started talking about it. Wasn't sure. We did receive information or requests for resources to be provided. So Christine had requested a number of exhibits to be provided, which she did provide out. And so if you wanted to add anything. And then Tony also provided a small little presentation of some vision stuff, and then we'll just go around the room from there and add on to that. So.
There's only, I think it's important, because I represent the Trails and Open Space, and we're very vigilant about the trails and future proposed trails. And these areas that we're talking about have existing trails and proposed trails. And part of my vision, and I guess we're going to share that with photos and everything, is, equestrian hiking and mountain biking, ballooning, all kinds of stuff in that vinified area. So I think that's really important to do it beautifully, and I think that having it open and, all that would be great if it's done well. So I just thought it would be important for everybody to see the trails, existing trails and proposed trails, because they do run through that whole area there. And then the next map is the drainage and recharge facilities, because, one of the things that was important to us during the general plan is to protect the waterways and make trails above the waterways and, those kind of things, because, waterways, of course, we're trying to save all our water and recharge it. And I think it's important to see that there are waterways and washes going through some of these projects, and also the flood corridor plan. For next meeting, I really wanted you guys all to see the plan for the Five Winds Ranch. The El Dorado already exists, but there's future plans for the El Dorado. But the Five Winds Ranch is a phenomenal plan, and it's one of the, probably a biggest jewel in Yucaipa's crown that's coming up, right? So the El Dorado is the newest park in Yucaipa, and it was a big deal because they had to annex the property line. It, and that was through the conservancies and the efforts of Frank Sessons and Dick Riddell. That wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Dave Myers and the city making that happen, and that's a beautiful open area there. So contiguous just west of that is the Five Winds Ranch, and there is a fabulous plan for that. But again, that's, the grant money is kind of what we're going for, and that's probably a 15-year project. Who knows what that is? So, the vinification of the land around it could be just like the most beautiful addition. And I think that if everybody knows what's going on out there, we can make more informed decisions. And one of the things that we talked about is having a meeting up on site, right there, right on the land, where exactly the land we're talking about. We need to do that, because it's different when we're looking here and we're talking about it, but when you're actually standing on the land and looking at it, it's a different concept. But I'm excited about it.
Yeah, the weather precluded us from doing the on-site, but we definitely want to do that, because it is a gorgeous backdrop to kind of vision that discussion. I did want to add, so the concept plan provided for El Dorado and Five Winds Ranch doesn't show, council had directed staff to pursue doing ornamental vineyards along Oakland Road, and so that concept plan is being developed for council's review in the future as well. But certainly that motif can be tied through, and the Five Winds Ranch and El Dorado could certainly be an asset or focal point to help tie different elements together as well as we further develop this. And then I know Tony had also provided a quick slide as well on some topics related to visioning to help kick us off. So.
Okay, I'll try to be brief on this. My thoughts on this is that we're a small community. We're beginning the growing process and so forth. So we're taking this from infancy and moving it forward. So we have to encourage our growing of, and we got to make it special, that we're growing local fruit for local consumption. Our winery, like Craig's, we're a negotiant. We buy fruit from other places. We bring it back, we process it, and we make the best wine we think we can make. But you can't make good wine or great wine unless you have really good grapes. I'll go to the next slide. So part of what we have to do, as well as not just looking at how we're going to, zone and this and that, is find out how we can get the best contacts with industry and how to grow the fruit, help our growers. We've got to develop growers. We have maybe 2 or 3 in the entire area and more talking about it. But you just can't go out and plant a vineyard and expect it to be beautiful. It takes a lot of work, this fruit, to turn it into something. Because if they don't sell it, they're going to sell it Temecula. We're not Temecula. We don't want to be Temecula. We want to be something different than that, better than that. You want to go to the next slide? So one of the things that I think we have to look at is we're going to be a direct-to-consumer type of a production environment, which means what we grow, we're selling to people. We're not putting it on store shelves in Arizona or some other state. It's going to be consumed mostly locally within a few, maybe miles or 100 miles out radius. After that, nobody's ever going to know about us until we become the best in the world of something, okay? And we have to look at a couple of things, I think. Wineries that are on property and wineries that are not on property. You can have growers that only want to grow fruit. You can have growers and winemakers that only want to make wine. And then you have that combination in between that maybe some are going to grow and sell it and make some of their own, and then maybe develop their own little winery after that. So we have to encourage that diversification across the board. Okay, you want to go to the next slide? I was walking up the street the other day. I got nothing else to do right now. And I saw the new signs. They're beautiful. But as we think about it, we want to go up there and we want to see, maybe there are some bigger wineries that have enough property that they're growing fruit. They may have their own small little production facility and a small tasting room that people can go there, but it's not thousands. It's not like Temecula. It's a much smaller, condensed deal. We'll go to the next slide. And here are a couple of examples. Do any of those look like wineries? They are. Very, very good wineries. And the parking spaces in them are handling about 10 cars at the most. And you drive by, and if you know where you're going, you can find them. They sell their own wine under their name. They are recognized as some of the top wine producers in this region. And a lot of their fruit they sell to Napa and other places. So, that's what they do. We'll go to the next slide. And then this is another one here in local. This is a small we had a little gathering outside one day, and we were doing a little wine tasting. So we're actually doing that here to some level. Nice, beautiful scenery, looking out at the hills and the mountains. So we are doing it here to some level, and it's growing here, which we need to embrace that. But the other part of it, you want to go to the next slide, is how we look at, we're going to call it maybe the more local. Here is the picture on the left is an actual bonded custom crush facility. They handle 90 some odd small wineries that don't have the money because it's a very expensive proposition to get into. The one on the right there is actually a small winery. They do excellent stuff along with next to a beer brewery. Don't care about mixing that, but that's okay. But they're in the town. They're right downtown in this little small town. You want to go to the next slide? And this picture it's hard to see, but there's one building right there. There are 2 wineries in it. They're sharing their tasting room. Right next to them is another winery that they're selling theirs. And that's just that's a walking distance. Now, I'm going to kind of roll down to the next slide. You want to scroll to the next slide? Okay. Is that the same one? No.
I think that's the last one.
Oh, I sent you 2. Okay. But there was another one where there was another winery. But in essence, there were like 4 wineries on one block. 2 on this side of the street, 3 on this side of the street. You walked the block, that's what you had. You had your restaurants, you had your movie theater, you had everything to create a place to go. The other half of the presentation, I sent you 2 to try to reduce it, but it went into, so we want to try to create the environment. I think we can do that. The other thing was looking at how we, start, I'm gonna call it modifying the city to make it look like we grow wine, we grow grapes, Put some grapes up next to some of the buildings up and down the street here so you can see that. Just things to kind of create the image. And so those are some of my thoughts. Because I think we can do this, and we can, I look at it as being, have areas that can grow grapes. If they're big enough, they can actually have a winery on site, but they're not massive per se, so you're controlling traffic. You have the winery in the areas, or tasting rooms in areas that are more conducive for foot traffic, higher volumes of traffic. Also would look at and understand that the wine that we're going to make is not going to be a $5 bottle of wine. It's going to be a much more expensive bottle, $30, $40 a bottle. So when we have venues or events, we need to, like at the YPAC, we're not selling the $5 bottles in their tastings. We're selling our wine in tastings. We're trying to get people to see it. We might even have a visitor center up there that we can do tastings or samples for people to get an idea of, and then here's our map of where you can go to find these beautiful places. So we can help advertise and do things like that. So those are my thoughts and what I would like to see.
Right, thanks, Tony.
Cesar Roldan.
Is now exiting.
Lost them already.
Does anyone have any questions for Tony?
I'd like to add to what Tony said. Tony's absolutely correct that great wine comes from great grapes, and it is imperative that we use as much of the land that we've been given to produce fruit. As this industry grows and more wineries come on, the demand is going to be much higher. And so we need to be able to accommodate these wineries that are coming on. If not, we are going to reach a point where we can no longer grow. This is a very special region. The wine produced here is amazing. And we have evidence of that. People growing in Yucaipa, wine has been made from their fruit. It has obviously not gone to market without an AVA. I've tasted it. I've been a part of it. And the wine will rival wine from anywhere in the state of California. It's also very important not to get caught up in this concept of ornamental vineyards. The vineyards really do serve a very specific purpose, and this is a very serious industry. It's a very expensive one. It's a highly marketable, competitive, but capital generating industry. So we just can't be frivolous about where vines are planted and how they're planted. They must be planted for a purpose. And focusing first and foremost on producing a high-end product is the most important thing. It would stand to reason that without producing such a high-quality product, we will be unable to compete in the marketplace. And if the focus is there and not on, let's say, what I see the mistakes Temecula has made, that has rapidly gained a reputation for resorts, hotels, wedding parties, at the expense of wine quality, we can easily fall into the same problem that they have. So I agree also with Tony that this will be a region that is pretty much entirely direct to consumer, which is very beneficial, which is probably the reason that Temecula continues to survive.
Well, my feeling on it is that I don't believe, I understand growth is inevitable and is, a fact of life for all of us. But I don't think that the residents in Yucaipa would buy off on growing this kind of a business to the point that a lot of other areas have done in, the saturation point that I feel like those are places I don't want to live. I don't want to live in Temecula. I don't want to live in Napa. I don't want to live in Sonoma where, yeah, it's pretty to look at. It's a nice place to visit, but it's not a place where you want to live. And those wine growers in those areas are running the show, and they tell everybody who can do what. That's the way it's evolved. And so, yes, do we need jobs and industry and all the things that come along with this that are beautiful? But I'm being, I'm not trying to be a downer here, but I just don't want it to run away with us. I mean, I'm looking at just the concept here. We don't have a fire truck that can fight a fire over 3 stories high in this city. So this hotel here goes up to like 5 stories. No. That's just not what I think Yucaipa's about. I don't think that's why people move here. And I don't think that's what, so I do believe that, and my vision is, yeah, we can have wine growers here. We can have some small boutiques, wineries, things. Maybe we need to look at an area uptown that says tasting rooms can only go in these areas. And you can't have tasting rooms at every single little wine grower's place because traffic will be going in and out to everybody's, little boutique winery.
Well,
I think that's good.
I think also the more homes we involve, the more traffic we're going to have. So.
And that's a natural. And there are fees collected for developers so that they have to pay in order to put in those roads in the streets and what have you. Are the wine growers going to pay those fees? Are they're going to have to pay the development impact fees that a builder has to pay? I doubt it. So if we're going to create traffic, we've got to have some way in the front end to take care of that and some mitigation measures that go into that, because that's what houses do. That's what developers do.
I think, in speaking with quite a number of people in this community, I think it's really clear that most everyone on that north bench, on that north side, does not want to see homes there. And I think that if it were, let's say, economically feasible to do it, we may have seen them there already. So I think it's what the community's feeling is regarding homes on that north side from the people I speak to. So,
and I can understand that. Most of the people you speak to probably drink wine and are wine growers. And that's not, I'm not saying that I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade. I'm just saying, I've been on planning commission for 20 years. And I have, I think, a fairly good feel for what happens when we have these projects come in. Yeah, I mean, do people want those homes? No, they don't. Sometimes we have to do it, we have a general plan, and we stick with it. Sometimes we will make modifications to that so that they're smaller, you know, more dense in areas for houses, and we'll leave more open space. Those are the kind of things that we can do. But the main, I think the main point over all these years that's come to me is that people want to protect their way of life. They want to protect the rural lifestyle. They want to be able to see the hills. They don't want, you're right, they don't want more houses. Some of that is just inevitable, and there's nothing, as planning commissioner, there's nothing I can do about it. But we need to make sure that what we do, we are able to pay for the things that need to happen. Okay, I have a big concern for that. The biggest problem I have that I see in Temecula is the traffic. And that freeway, I mean, you know, you ever go down there on either rush hour, it used to be just on the weekends, but you know, you go out Winchester Road and try to get to the freeway, for crying out loud.
Sure.
Forget it.
No, I think,
And those are things that have to be, I have, this whole time I have been on the Planning Commission, that is one thing I've said. When we did the interchange at Live Oak, and there was gonna be a project over where the Christmas tree farm is, and the one thing that I was adamant about, and staff at the time understood that, was that we do not give one certificate of occupancy until that interchange is done, till those off-ramps and those signals were in. So that's something that I just feel like we really need to protect, and that we keep those intersections at an acceptable level of service for residents, much less people that come to visit.
well, with the wine industry, though, I think one of the ways you can naturally restrict that and avoid some of that is, initially when we went into this, we wanted to create very small boutique, micro boutique wineries. The problem approaching what you're referencing is, if you do have these bigger wineries, if you do have the hotels, if you do have a draw of people, that's going to create some traffic congestion, et cetera, issues like that. If we really strive to have very small wineries that don't have those additional amenities, I think that's really going to help alleviate some of those problems. I really do. I mean, I think the bigger wineries are the ones that may create that.
Right. I certainly don't want to be a Temecula. A Temecula, you go to their wineries, it's a monolith. It's a parking space that holds 100 and something cars. That means you've got 4 people in it, you've got 400 to 800 people coming to something. That's insane. And there's one here, one across the street, one, don't want that. That's why I was trying to show the pictures of small. It looks like a house. It almost is a house. It has a small production facility. And I think that as part of what we would look at is, we're developing the structure that, in order to have something maybe on site, your vineyard to start with. If you're this size of property, maybe you can have a small tasting room that can handle 4 or 5 or 10 cars. That's it. And there's only a few of them up there. There's more focus on growing grapes than being a tourist attraction. The tourist attraction is further down, where the traffic patterns are more suited, like in Uptown or somewhere else in that area, where you can, I think, we get people there. I know that one of the meetings we had some, where the Sheila and some people went out and took some pictures of some other areas. And I think we need to look at, okay, what area do we best fit? We're not a Temecula. I don't particularly care about being a Napa either, but there's some other places in there that are beautiful countrysides. You have your housing developments that are tucked in here and there, and they're building more. Every time I go to my vineyards, I see new housing tracts going in, but they're in the city areas. And every time I show up, there's another little tasting room down the street or off to the side street. It's someone's heart and passion. And that's what I think we're all want to do, is have heart and passion. Ideally, if we can, from a planning standpoint, you put more houses further down, closer to the freeway. I mean, you look at, there's a lot of property that's opened up further that direction. You
But
already
Tony,
have-
you can't control the people that own the land. I mean, they have rights. And you know what, I just want to point out one thing that we haven't talked about. And, you know, we're talking about a overlay and what we would like to see. And, you know, really, I'd really like to see more information about setbacks and densities in restaurants and who has what and what works and what doesn't. I'd really like to see those 6 case studies so we can speak more articulately about those things. But let's not forget, we're making a recommendation to city council. That doesn't mean they're going to do it. We have 2 city councilmen sitting on the phone right now listening to it. We have a planning commissioner right here. And every time it goes up for a vote, public is going to be right here. And part of this process is they're going to reach out, I don't know how many meetings they're going to have with the general public. So we can hypothecate and we can think anything we want, but you know Yucaipa has a closed door mentality. As soon as people come in here, and I'm a real estate broker for over 30 years, they want the door closed. They don't want other people coming here. They want it quiet and rural. And we can accomplish everything if we do it right. But let's not think when we're saying, hey, and we got to open a visitor center and we're going to plant grapes over here. Who's we? The city's not going to do that. They wouldn't even pass Measure E. So when you're talking about things, we're making suggestions. We can't make suggestions economically of what the city's going to do and not do. And I think it's a good point to have some, you know, other than the stakeholders here, have the people that live on the North Bench. Because when we were talking about the Casablanca project and the Wilson Creek, oh my God, you think I'm, you know, intense. Wait till you see what's going to come at us. I'm serious. Those people that live in those areas have as strong of opinion as we do. And the problem is they're going to come over here, and every time in the Trails and Open Space Committee, we have trails, and there could be 2 properties, and the trail doesn't connect. It's a proposed trail. So the next person that comes in there that buys it, we want to talk to them about, you know, opening the trail. It's just one dang property. It doesn't affect their property at all. But guess what? If it's not in writing and it's not done, it's not going to happen. So people have rights, and we're talking about what we're going to re-density, and we're going to rezone, you know, and make other people's land higher density. Well, if they don't want to do that, they're going to tell us to pound sand, you know. So I think we need to be vigilant, and maybe the next one of the, you know, public outreach may be the next one, because really no public comment has come. I mean, really, people aren't coming in here to discuss their ideas and
They
stuff.
really don't know.
But they will,
Don't
and
know,
you know, and this is probably a good part to hear what they want up there.
Yeah, Christine, thank you. We are planning a community meeting sometime in the near
I'm sure
future.
you
I've been working with Ben on the schedule. With all of the,
I think the community knows a lot more than you think they do.
Well, I'd like to hear it from them.
I'm sure the time is coming.
Yeah, no
so
kidding.
anyway, so thank you, Christine. Going on with our visioning exercise, we have the same 3 rules as last time. There are no bad ideas. Everyone's opinion is valued, and we want to hear from everyone. So next slide. So these are the 3 questions. We're going to go back and revisit these from last month. How do you see Yucaipa in the future? What role does vinification play in Yucaipa's future? And how would the growth of the wine industry most benefit Yucaipa? And this is a cute little quote from D.H. Lawrence that I actually saw when I visited an estate winery on my vacation. And that's why I put the picture there. And it says, if we sip the wine, we find dreams coming upon us out of the imminent night. So that's what we're really doing. And we're sharing our dreams here. We're not getting more concrete than that. So, and to kick off the discussion, I did bring, this kind of goes along with what Tony was saying. This is the Madeira Wine Trail, and there are a lot of small wineries in sort of obscure locations, but they've been able to connect them all through identification and wayfinding, a really strong wayfinding system. So they developed this Madeira Wine Trail, and you can see they have the mileage and the location of all the different wineries that are on the trail.
In Madera,
It's near Fresno.
the Central Coast. It's not the coast,
on the way
excuse
to-
me, it's inland, on
It's
Fresno.
on the way to Yosemite.
Yeah, it's above Fresno off of the 99.
So who haven't we heard from today?
Oh, I had so many more ideas and things to say after
Is that my
everyone
fault?
had spoke, so I don't mind going last this time.
You want to go last?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're all done.
Oh, you're all done?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were just moving on to answering these questions and everyone was
It's
going
up
to speak up.
to, well, Sheila.
Yeah, and we can keep adding on. I know Jer, and then we
He'll
have the
be
people on
last.
the phone as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Would you like to
You
be
can
last?
go last.
no, I mean,
That's okay.
Whatever
Jared, do you have,
You went first last time, so.
right, and after I heard everyone's opinions, I thought, oh, I could add on to that or, so on and so forth. Just, yeah, maybe I'll go last.
Okay.
Jared, do you have any comments? Sir?
Okay. You know, if you look at the community, what do you have in the community? If you look at sports, this town has been famous, for sports. From soccer to baseball, you name it, this town is renowned for that. As far as the hiking and the trails, we've come a long ways for the hiking, making that, a game plan for Yucaipa, for the trails. And for the open space areas and the horse trails, this town has been known for horses. And we got a cultural
Is now
center
exiting.
that's up in place. But we look back at the rodeo. Who thought of rodeo? Yet we sold out. We had to push people away. So it shows that this community is very, vulnerable to almost anything. And I think there's plenty of room for a winery in a small scale in this town. I don't think it'll ever be huge. I mean, because we don't have the land for it. We don't have the space like Temecula did, or Napa, or any of these communities. We're not set up for anything like that. But I think we could be a nice, great little winery community, and with everything else we have, I think we offer a lot for people to want to be in Yucaipa. That's about all I got to put in. I want to hear what Ben has to say now.
Sure. Just to go off of what everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to go off of what Tony and Craig were saying about good wine comes from good fruit. I know in your presentation last month,
Is now joining.
you had talked about not having a minimum size for planting grapes, but you also stressed the importance of not focusing on ornamental planting grapes on just small acreage, doing something to scale. So setting a minimum lot size of, let's say, 7 acres, where it's feasible, scalable, you can do something. I think that's important. I think, I forget the lady's name, but she talked about organic biodynamic farming. I think setting those in place is very important too. This is a big beer drinking town. I don't even have any taps in my wine shop. Maybe out of the little fridge that I have, 25% of my sales come from beer. But people know good wine, and I've seen a lot of people's palates change over time. And once you turn someone on a good wine, they'll take a liking to it, and they know it's good. People know the difference between good and bad wine.
That's true.
So just focusing on quality is important. And I also think that I like what you guys said about, having like a small tasting room where it's not 100 parking spaces, but having bigger land and just showing that, you're passionate about farming, because that's where the wine is really made. And yeah, that's it for now. Maybe I'll chime back in when I
Okay.
hear something different.
Sheila's back there taking notes, so,
I'm taking notes.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Does anyone online have a comment or want to add their vision statement?
This is Bobby Duncan. Does somebody else want to talk?
Go ahead, Bobby.
Who's that? So it sounds like, and I've sat in on a few of these meetings, and it sounds like we've got two different schools of thought. One school of thought is no houses. The other school is only grapes, and maybe some in between, a little of this and a lot of that. And it seems like a good part of our committee is all about agriculture and not about houses. I've had a vision since I got elected to city council, and I've talked to Ray about it several times. Ed Haddad is building a Comfort Inn down at the freeway. He's got a 98-room hotel, and I had envisioned an old trolley type of bus, two of them, to go from that hotel to Oak Glen, because in reality, Oak Glen is the biggest attraction that we have in this area. I've worked in Los Angeles for a lot of years, and people ask me where I live, and I say I live in Yucaipa, and they say, "Oh, that's out there near that Apple place." Yeah, that's exactly where it's at. So the attraction of Oak Glen, even though it does create a lot of traffic, it is a destination for a lot of people in Southern California, and I've envisioned this whole project as being also a destination, and maybe somehow trying to combine the two. So the trolley idea is to go from the hotel through the uptown up to the wineries or winery or that area, and then maybe on up to Oak Glen, and then back to the winery, back down to the hotel, and have two trolleys going back and forth. I agree that this is potentially a traffic problem. But one thing we've got to keep in mind right now, there's a bill, Senate Bill 920 or 922, that came out of the state Senate that says that Governor Newsom wants to eliminate our zoning, period. And everything's going to be multifamily because he wants to develop every square inch and turn it into apartments. That's his vision for California. We need to get out in front of that and figure out how we can make sure that doesn't happen to our community, because we are a bedroom community. And I love Yucaipa, and I want to keep it as rural as possible. So I haven't made up my mind yet exactly how I feel about any one of the schools of thought. I think they all have merit, and I'm anxious to see what the committee comes up with as far as a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Jillian Kowalczyk here.
Okay.
I wanted to speak to the concept of the ornamental grapes. I also think that can be an idea that can go wrong. Just because Yucaipa is a good place to grow grapes doesn't mean each and every location would be. The slope of the land, there might be shading, the direction that the grapes have to be planted can impact a lot. And then if we have something like that, I've seen other cities do it with like oranges and things like that. If there's no upkeep and it doesn't look presentable at all times, that can be a hindrance more than a help. So I just wanted to speak to that. And then also the other thing that came to my mind is when we were talking about smaller boutique wineries with small amounts of parking spaces. If the wineries do something more like an appointment only for people who aren't locals, that might help mitigate traffic a bit and make things a little more organized. But that's all I had to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian. Anyone else?
Hey, it's Denise. I agree with Councilman Duncan. Very good dialogue and a lot to think about. I would agree. I think that the important thing is trying to determine, where it makes sense to grow quality grapes in Yucaipa. If it's done well, I think we win because, as Christina was saying, we do have some very important open space areas and trails that we have been strategic about growing. And while grapes can be an industry, they also have a way of keeping the feeling of our community rural. So, and I would agree, I don't think people want the busy tourist feeling like you experience when you go to Temecula. So I think that vinification, again, has a way to help keep our open space open, but as vineyards, and that the wine industry, if it's done right, and we figure out the most appropriate places to have the tasting rooms, but certainly considering how to spread them apart to get people to come here to taste the fruit that's growing, I think then it would be a win-win for everybody. But I don't see it getting big. I would agree.
Denise, Denise, are you saying that you would spread the small winery tasting rooms further apart so people would have to drive further to go to each one, or is that what you just said?
I am saying that we need to be very strategic in where we believe they are best suited to get the most benefit with the least amount of impacts. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What's that? Can you speak loud enough, or do you want to come up to the mic? Okay.
Hi, everybody. I think I know everybody here at this point. My name is Devin. I work with Craig. I'm on the board of the Yucaipa Valley Wine Alliance and the director of Suveg Cellars. I wanted to address a couple things that were discussed throughout this meeting just to provide relevant and factual information.
Okay, hold on a minute.
Is that okay?
You're not actually on the committee, though, are you, Devin?
I'm not on the committee, but you
I know.
told me to come up here. So.
I know, but I know, but you were raising your hand, so I wasn't even.
Well, also, I mean, during the public comment period, no one here was actually asked if they wanted to comment publicly, and I would love to. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
All right.
I mean, if there's an issue with me speaking,
No,
I'll
it's
go
just
sit
not.
down.
It's not. I don't mind you speaking.
Go ahead.
It's fine.
I would love to hear what you have to say. It's just that I'm trying to. Sometimes I get.
Say anyway. Go ahead.
I get sat on for this one time. So go ahead.
Promise that won't happen here. First thing I wanted to address is actually something you were talking about, which was paying for things through developmental impact fees.
Yes.
We can provide research to you about how property taxes are influenced by the development of a wine industry, and that increase in revenue, property tax-wise, by the successful development of an industry can help offset costs.
I think you showed that to us in your presentation.
Exactly, but you were concerned today, right? You said, I really want this to be paid for.
I said, developers pay development impact fees, which pay for the roads and the signals and the things that come with those houses.
Yes, and I'm also, and you know, I'm saying that in addition to raising money through development impact fees, we can also raise money through the addition of more property tax revenue, and that happens with the development of a wine industry. And if you would like to see data on that, we can.
I don't need to see data on that, thank you. I do want to see data on, and I'm sure it's there, on water usage, on water for growing vines versus households. We talked about that a little bit last time, and I still haven't seen anything on that. So I would like to know one versus the other, because believe me, that will be another issue that comes up from the public. So
that's fine.
Water always is.
Water is definitely an issue, and again, we'd be happy to provide that research to you. And you know, the other thing I wanted to address was something that Christine said, where what we, at least Craig and I, are aiming to do here is not to limit what people can and can't do with their land. That's not our objective. Our objective is to open up another potential for land use for many owners who right now are restricted to tentative tract mapping, to building homes that might not be economically feasible right now because of, one, the actual cost of building when you don't have density, and two, the political climate around the development of new homes. So, you know, the AVA Planning Commission, right, the Vineyard Overlay District, this is an alternative land use where landowners can take this if they wish to and run with it. We're not, and I think it's toxic to market this as something that would potentially limit land use for people. Any developer who wants to take their land through the traditional planning process should have the opportunity to do so. And the Planning Commission should make an assessment of it, and it should go to City Council as it always has. That I don't think is why we're here. We're not here to play the role of the Planning Commission and City Council. We're here to assess what can these people do as an alternative land use that would benefit this community, not adding to additional traffic patterns, which would be a detriment to the community, and not bankrupting our city coffers. So I'm just trying to kind of alternatively frame what I think we want to do here, because I don't think, you know, that there's this thing where we say two schools of thought. What we're ultimately trying to do is improve this community. We want jobs here. The people who live here can work. We don't want this to be Temecula where nobody can drive around. These are all things that we agree, that everyone, when they went around the room the last time here, agreed on. We don't want more traffic.
Right.
We can think of ways to mitigate that. And, you know, unfortunately, as Craig has brought up multiple times, it's hard to lessen the amount of traffic when you do put new homes in. But that being said, I don't think that we should categorize this as separate schools of thought. We can all agree on things here that are good for this community, and we can all say that, like, we want it. And Christine, I know you have your doubts about whether or not the community wants a wine industry here.
Actually, I don't.
Okay.
I don't have doubts about that.
Okay. That being said, if you would like to see a very strong show of support and you would like to see more people widely attend these meetings, perhaps I could talk to Ben and Chris about maybe properly marketing these.
It's not time yet, Devin.
Not
Thank
time
you.
yet,
Not
but
yet.
that being said.
That will happen.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Anyone else? Any other comments or questions?
No,
It's up to Denise.
that's okay. I think we can wait and next time, there's plenty of time for public comment. Yeah, email it or, you know. We don't have speaker forms up. Okay, then come on. I know, yeah. And normally it's only, you know, public comment period, you guys get 3 minutes, so it's okay. All right.
My name is Preston Todd. My wife and I own North Cork Vineyard and Winery here in Yucaipa. We have 40 acres. We're the largest vineyard in Yucaipa. We planned to start planting 8 years ago. Our winery is opening up in probably October. We're already approved, we're bonded, we're licensed, ABC, TTB, all that. We have wine made from Yucaipa, from our grapes. Like I said, we have about 3 acres, planted of our 40 acres, and I'm right against that 52 homes. So I have a view of that right there up on the north bench. Speaking about our wine real quick, we had a professional sommelier come yesterday, and he said our wine is $60 a bottle. That's stuff from Yucaipa, and they will pay for that. And I just want you to know what's kind of going on that. The housing, I'm a little concerned about. You know, I understand we have to have housing, stuff like that, but I'm a little concerned about 52 acres right next to our winery, which was homesteaded in 1889. I live in the 3rd oldest house in Yucaipa. And so, and the guy who built my house started a winery there in 1890.
And it abuts which one? Where is
Pardon?
it? Where is it? It abuts one of these? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm right above that 52 acres. I'm on Yucaipa Ridge Road.
Okay.
But I'm right above there. Another thing I like too is I love when horse riders go through wineries and trails. That's awesome. That's hikers, mountain bikers, all that can be. That's a great idea. No motorcycles, obviously, But that's a really good idea to bring in more people into the wineries as they're hiking by. Get a glass of wine where they're at it, or riding their horses, or have a hitching post at all the wineries. That's another idea. I just want you to know that's kind of what's going on. So sorry to take up your time, but
Okay.
I just want to know. Thank you so much for having me here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bring your wine next time.
This is a good tasting room right here. It's a tasting.
You know, while we're talking about other things, I want to make sure that we put out that the pesticides, you know, we need to be vigilant about that. So, you know, we're trying in Yucaipa
As that was, yeah, you
to
had
cut
that
down the
from-
rodenticides and pesticides.
Oh, okay, thanks, Craig. You're not gonna put your stickers on.
Oh, no stickers, Craig? Oh, okay, all right. All right, we do want to do our sticker exercise. Karen and I actually put together a list of guiding principles from our last meeting. So this is just a beginning. We'll be working on that a lot more through this whole process. So the letters are very small. I apologize for that. So I may just read them quickly. And you're welcome to put stickers on all of these as well. The first one is support viticulture and the winemaking industry in a way that protects the rural atmosphere of Yucaipa. Designate an area within the city as a wine country destination to encourage planting of a critical mass of vineyards. Follow a planned approach to development of the wine industry to encourage appropriate wine-related economic growth and agritourism. Encourage sustainable viticulture and winemaking practices. Adopt adequate buffer requirements between existing...
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Encourage sustainable... Okay. Adopt adequate buffer requirements between existing and planned residential development and viticulture operations to avoid potential conflicts. Promote Yucaipa as a premier winemaking destination, including a unified rebranding effort that brings together the Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development Department, and other interested organizations. That's something we heard loud and clear during the Temecula tour. Support appropriate small-scale winery-related accessory uses, including tasting rooms and bed and breakfast inns where infrastructure permits. Consider permanent and temporary wine and winery-related activities, including wine festivals, wine tasting events, harvest festivals, weddings, and corporate events, having a regional draw in appropriate locations. Support the wine industry businesses and activities within the Uptown District to expand the tourism industry. And number 10, honor the rights of existing property owners. So I will lay this here, and we can go ahead and start our sticker exercise. So if everyone wants to come up and grab their own stickers, you can feel free to put them anywhere on any of the displays as you see fit.
I just want to quickly say, you wrote no minimum size for planting grapes, but I meant to say, I think there should.
Yes.
There should be.
Yes, I started writing down as we were starting to, and there was discussion.
No worries.
Thank you for clarifying.
Do they have all of them? And then since we have, I did want to apologize since we are teleconferencing kind of last minute, we do have a few people that aren't available. So if they want to send in from the pictures that were provided on the Teams chat for that, if not, we'll send out the exhibits for those on the phone as well. Later on, they can add their figurative stickers and we'll add them to the exhibits as well. But certainly last minute adjustment with some of the changes. And so we'll make it happen though.
Blue is yes.
Okay, we've decided to delegate a gray sticker as well. So red is no, green and blue are yes, and yellow is maybe.
Green and blue are yes.
It's okay.
We can send these to the people that aren't here, right?
Yes, yes.
Just identify which ones maybe we can number them.
I can easily do that, yes.
Not really, and with 3 people not here.
Yes.
Right.
Well, Fred and Mike find them too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few.
So all the members that we. Maybe there's a way to do it interactively, yes. Check the box.
Yeah, I think we can do that. He did like consolidate it through it. Still, I mean,
You look tired, I know.
no, it's because of the council action code. Oh, got it. Was that, okay, it could be a lot. Yeah. Oh, that's okay.
Well, I like that. I want the same one, continue. Hey, let me ask you this. On this one, are we approving or disapproving?
We're just saying that, no, not the architecture, just the idea of having a wine trail and a little map that takes you through, and there's a direction sign. They do that in Paso Robles.
Yeah. I can't imagine that. Not terrible.
Oh,
Not
that?
terrible. Not terrible.
Is that what I said?
Yes.
No.
Yes,
That's what I told Bobby.
do this.
I think so, yeah.
Are we supposed to do this one too? I might need some more buttons. That's important.
Existing property owners, absolutely.
Consider permanent and temporary wine-related activities. That's important too. We're gonna put in, right now, this is not a big deal. Support appropriate small-scale wine-related accessories, including testimonials. What do you think?
Right, support appropriate small-scale winery-related accessory uses, including tasting rooms, river infrastructure permits. Yeah, I think so.
You think so?
Yeah.
I think we should concentrate on doing it first. Promote wine, Yucaipa's premier wine, including a unified rebranding effort. Would you do that? Do you think the city's gonna do that? Rebrand it? Not until it's up and running, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're not gonna spend money, the city on it, or the citizens on it? Follow a planned approach to the development of the wine industry to encourage appropriate wine-related economic. Planned approach to the development of the wine industry.
I don't know, but I like the word planned approach.
Yeah, so we'll give it a design point, huh? Let's do it. Designate an area within the city as wine country destination to encourage planting a critical mass of wine.
What do you want me to do with you?
I want you to love me up.
Oh, yeah. I got bed as a client, how could be more wrong?
All right. Just as a courtesy to those that are on the phone, I'm going to quickly wrap up our last slide while the rest of you are putting stickers on concepts. The next meeting in August will be, Karen will be here and we will be presenting our initial findings.
What are initial findings of what we came together and talked about and things?
Yes. Guiding principles, summary, yes. And our recommendation as far as the best planning tool and why, a comparison. We've already put together a matrix that we sent to Ben, so we'll be discussing that in further detail before it's presented. So here are some questions to consider. How can Yucaipa encourage vinification and the wine industry? What is the best balance between property owners' needs, housing, and the wine industry? And what planning tool would be best suited to accomplish these goals? So a little food for thought. And with that, this will conclude the formal part of the meeting.
We're going to talk about like density and minimum acreage and things like that. In the next one?